Welcome to the Code 4 Couples podcast, focusing on topics for law enforcement officers and couples to keep you and your relationship connected, resilient, and Code 4. Now, your host, law enforcement expert Cyndi Doyle, author of Hold the Line and My Wife.
Welcome back to Code 4 Couples, guys. I am honored today because I have Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman with me. I am honored to have him here. And if you do not know who Grossman is, you are hiding under a rock, let me tell you. Let me do a brief little introduction. He is a retired U.S. Army Ranger. He was a paratrooper, former West Point psychology professor. He has my heart. He has a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu, which is the martial art for firearms, has been inducted to the U.S. Martial Hall of Fame. Lieutenant Colonel Grossman's research was cited by the President of the United States in national address, and he testifies before the U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, and numerous state legislatures. He has served as an expert witness and consultant in state and federal courts. He has 5 patents to his name, has published 4 novels, 2 children's books, 6 nonfiction books, including his perennial bestseller on killing with over 500,000 copies sold, and a New York Times best-selling book co-authored by Glenn Beck, along with others that I know that you have co-authored, including Evan Davis, who we've had on the podcast before, and there's a couple books that we're going to talk about. He has presented papers before the National Conventions of American Medical Association, American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. Since his retirement from the U.S. Army in 1998, he has been on the road almost 300 days a year for over 19 years and is one of our nation's leading trainers for military, law enforcement, mental health providers, and school safety organizations. Today, Lieutenant Colonel Grossman is director of the Killology Research Group at killology.com. In the wake of the 9/11 terrorist attack, he has written and spoken extensively on terroristic threat with articles published in the Harvard Journal of Law, the Civil Policy, and many leading law enforcement journals. He has been inducted as a life diplomat by the American Board for Certification in Homeland Security and a life member of the American College of Forensic Examiner Institute. Everybody, please welcome, so honored, Lieutenant Colonel Dave Grossman. Thank you so much for being here and talking with me today.
Thank you, Cyndi, and Dave works real good. Dave. Ordinarily, I tell people, don't bother with the intro. They know who I am, they can find out. But in recent months, there's been a systematic attack on me. And
there has been.
They say this guy is an Army Ranger who teaches killology to cops. I thought criminology is not about teaching people criminals, and killology is not about teaching people to kill. Psychology is not about teaching people to be psychos.
Yes.
Killology is about understanding the things that empower and restrain killing in our society, and is based on my book on killing. The bottom line is, if you Google the articles about me, you'll see article after article. They don't mention my book, they don't mention my credentials, they don't mention anything else. And a few sentences, you can demonstrate how biased and flawed that is.
Absolutely.
And in a microcosm, that represents what they're doing to law enforcement across America. They're not interested in the truth. They're not interested in mentioning my book or mentioning anything else. They set up this model of this Army Ranger who's teaching our cops to kill and pumping this hate based on that. And the point is, that's what's happening across our nation, a broad brush with the media talking about our cops. You can't believe what they're saying. Chuck Holton, I did an interview with him, he's a famous Christian Broadcasting Network guy, podcaster, and he's at Portland, Oregon every night. And he said, you don't believe the violence, you don't believe what's happening. And yet the media is not reporting it. They say these are peaceful demonstrators. And we can't believe them. You've got to practically turn off everything, and people say, oh, Fox is biased. No, they're biased. If Fox is the only one that's even beginning to give a balanced approach, and you need to take everything they're saying with a grain of salt. These are crazy times.
It is. And that's one of the reasons why I had seen that you were being attacked. And as somebody who's I was telling you before we came on the podcast, pivotal to me and my relationship and where I am putting out the podcast, I think is really important. And as a spouse, many times we're not aware because I have this equal balance of listeners of officers and spouses. And I think it's really important as officers that they know, I know you're talking about what they want to hear from you. I know because I've had people text me some things, hey, make sure. But then as spouses, I think it's also important for us to understand, to be able to not just say, hey, that's wrong, but to understand and say, hey, here's what you're not understanding. Let me explain some things. And this comes from somebody who's an expert. And that's why it was so important to me to have you on, and appreciate that. And for those of you just briefly who don't know, I think I've told this story a couple times, but part of the reason why Code 4 became Code 4 was because my husband was reading on combat, I think. Pretty sure it was on combat, not on killing. He has both. And he looked at me one night when we were laying in bed reading, and he says, do you know what the DSM is? And I looked at him and I said, yeah, that's my diagnostic manual. And I just, whatever, what are you reading? And then he says, am I a sociopath? I was like, what are you reading? And he gets this book, and we started talking about it. And that was one of my aha moments, that there was some psychology, there was something happening to my husband, and it wasn't just quote unquote a job, and why can't he turn it off, which is what I was trying to just turn it off all the time, and that doesn't work. One of my main goals of having you on the podcast was to help make sure, like I said, spouses understand how to speak intelligently about, I had called it the warrior mindset. You had corrected me a little bit, but I'm going to go with my original question, which was the warrior mindset. Can you explain a little bit about the warrior mindset?
There really is concern in the civilian world about teaching cops military mindset. Fire talks about being fire service warriors and EMS warriors, but you apply the word warrior to cops and they attack. You teach the cops to be warriors. And what I do is I'd say we got to draw from both sides of the equation, the guardian and the warrior. But the model I try to present is what I call the sheepdog. And inside your mouth, you have the chiseled teeth of a rabbit, and you have the same survival instinct of a run-like-hell rodent. Inside your mouth, you have the grinding molars of a herd animal, a grass-eating herd animal. And inside us, we have the instincts of a milling herd animal. I don't have to outrun you, I just have to outrun the slowest person in the flock. In your mouth, you also have the gripping fangs of a predator. And throughout history, man has been in the middle of the food chain. And we can go either way. We can be predator, we can be prey. It's a decision as to which you're going to be. And the predator under authority, the predator dedicated to protecting the flock. Most people are just not wired for violence. My book on killing talks about this dynamic of the resistance to kill. People say they take some horrible crime and say, oh, that proves that man is a killer. No, that's an outlier. That's literally 1 in a million. You explain to me that 99.9% of our citizens go a lifetime, never kill anybody or even seriously attempt to. Explain that. Divorce, infidelity, layoff, traffic accidents. In a lifetime of provocation, less than 1 in 1,000 citizens will even seriously attempt to take a life. Explain that. So most people are just not wired for violence, with the exception of protecting their children, which is a different dynamic. The wolves will feed on the sheep without mercy. And then there's the sheepdog. And the sheepdog is the one dedicated to protecting the flock and hunting the wolf. And it's which biological dynamic you draw upon. This idea of being the sheepdog, this protector, and the model, maybe we've all had that big old dog on the front porch and the kids can pull his tail and poke his ribs and he won't bite. But a bad man comes to the front door and he's all fur and fangs that fast.
Absolutely.
And that's our sheepdog. That really is that neural network that they're drawing into. And I talk about living your life in condition yellow. Condition white is denial. And when the bad stuff comes, you're stunned, you're overwhelmed. Condition yellow is just a state of mental readiness. And I talk about nurturing the quiet professional. Throughout history, we talk about the laconic Spartan, the stoic Roman, the inscrutable samurai, the stiff upper lip Brit. And today we talk about the quiet professional. Those are all different ways to say the same thing, self-control. And you live your life in condition yellow. It takes no more time, it takes no more energy. Keep your back to the wall. Have the life-saving tools of your profession on your body. And I ask people, are there things worse than death? Sure. I'll tell you what's worse than death. Is to stand there and watch your loved ones die and not have your gun on your body. Tell me you wouldn't spend the rest of your life in
Wow.
hell. And cops see that every day. They see that. They know what can happen. They see it every day. And so the healthy response is to follow that sheepdog model, to carry the life-saving tools, to coordinate with your spouse what to do when bad things happen, run away from me, call 911, identify, describe me. My husband's a cop. He's got a military haircut, he's got a black shirt and jeans, he's a cop and he's in trouble. And describe me and get out of there, get the kids out of there, call 911 and describe me and tell them I'm a cop. These are all dynamics about living our life in condition yellow. When the bad thing comes, we're not destroyed, we're not shattered, we prepared for this day for a lifetime. The thing to understand, the DSM says, whenever the cause of your trauma is human in nature, the degree of trauma is usually more severe and long-lasting. So we can have fire sprinklers and fire exits and fire alarms everywhere. And half the cost of a modern building goes into fire code. And we accept that. But if we try to prepare for violence, people's first response is denial. And we know the stages: denial, anger, bargaining, acceptance. But why do you carry a gun? Because there's bad people out there, and I know that, I can't deny it. But no, there are no bad people. You shouldn't be carrying a gun. That's denial. We need to work our way through that to bargaining and acceptance. And so the law enforcement officer no longer has that dynamic of denial. And they know that the most psychologically traumatic thing that could happen, interpersonal human aggression, can happen. They see it happen every day. I tell people to help understand what the DSM is saying there. Tell me if there's not a difference between these two scenarios. Scenario one, a tornado hits a house while you're gone, puts your family in the hospital. How do you feel about that one? Oh, thank God they're alive. Scenario two, criminals break into the house while you're gone and beat your family into a hospital stay. Now how you feel? It's all the difference in the world.
I'm in
One's an act of
PTSD after
nature,
that one.
the other's an intentional malignant act. Yes, and that is what we ask our cops to face every day. Interpersonal human aggression. The most corrosive, toxic, destructive realm any human being will ever face. And we desperately need people who will do that. Because if we don't, then everything's going to hell in a handbasket fast. And this current defund the police dynamic is insane. We all understand if there were no cops, it would be chaos, anarchy, madness, disaster. And that's what's happening. Homicides in New York and LA and Milwaukee and Atlanta, homicides have doubled just in the last year. Another dynamic, wrap your mind around. I present to colleges and universities, their criminology or their criminal science department, and I tell them that right off the bat, I tell them the field of criminal science is totally flawed because we measure violence by the number of dead people, the murder rate. But medical technology is holding down the murder rate. If we had
Wow, I never thought about that before.
And it's so important. It is such a fundamental boom. We immediately get it. But why aren't we tabulating that in our situation? If we had World War II level medical technology in Iraq, we'd have 10 times as many dead American troops. And the same thing is true in our streets. If we had Vietnam level medical technology in Afghanistan, we'd have at least 4 times many dead American troops, and the same thing in our streets. 20 years ago, right around the year 2000, we had a major UMass Harvard study. It said if we had 1970s medical technology, the murder rate would be 3 to 4 times what it is. And that data is 20 years old. The leaps and bounds of life-saving technology of the last 20 years is astounding. One medical expert says tourniquets alone may have cut the murder rate in half in the last decade. I teach cops by the hundreds. How many all carry a tourniquet? How many carried a tourniquet 10 years ago? A cop slaps on a tourniquet and saves a life, he's prevented a murder. 500,000 cops on duty in any given day, between the 3 shifts in stunningly violent times. EMS has tourniquets, everybody has tourniquets, but if 20 to 30 cops a day slap on a tourniquet and prevent a murder, we've cut the murder rate in half. The situation is much, much worse than it looks. And our cops are in the middle of this toxic, corrosive realm of interpersonal human aggression. And again, to understand who they are and what they do, first and foremost, as you said, my book on combat. And another thing is our Sheepdog Kids book. And in the back of the Sheepdog Kids book, we have the sheep, the wolf, and the sheepdog essay. It's an extract out of On Combat.
Okay.
And it really is for people of all ages to understand our sheepdog. Spouses read this, and one of the things we talk about is why we do what we do. And again, why we're that guardian, that warrior, why we're that sheepdog. I tell people, waiting at home for me is my bride of 45 years. 2 weeks ago, we celebrated our 45th wedding anniversary. She's my high school.
That's awesome. Yeah.
She was 15 when I proposed to her. Yeah, she was 15 when I proposed. I was 17.
Seriously?
We are from Arkansas.
Shut up.
Seriously. And 2 years later, she married a crazy Army paratrooper.
Wow.
And she's been on this ride with me for 45 years. I love her
Oh
more
my
than
gosh,
life.
that's an amazing story.
And yet, I spend most of my time, I spend well over 200 days a year, with the exception of this year, which is the quarantine, but I spend well over 200 days a year away from my bride, training cops and military and law enforcement. Why? Because the only people on earth more precious than my bride are my grandchildren. And we believe if we love our children, if we love our grandchildren, if we love our nation, if we love our God, if we love our way of life, we'll walk out that door and give it everything we got. I'm 63 years old. I'll be 64 next month. It's my prayer I can do it for another 20 years. Every day that I have the health, every day that somebody wants to hear we've got to give, I'm going to do it. Because I love my children. I love my grandchildren. I love my nation. I love my God. And if we truly love those children, if we truly love our nation and our way of life, then we'll give it everything we got every day. The powerful thing about love is the worse it gets, the more determined we are to give it all we got. And so nobody ever became a cop to get rich, at least not legally.
This is true.
Nobody became a cop to be a famous celebrity. Yeah, at least not in a good way. When you chose to be a cop, you chose a life of sacrifice. And you must believe that your sacrifice is for a noble and worthy purpose. How desperately the world needs what you have to give. And that brings us to the whole defund the cops are the bad guys. Several people have sent in to me little memes that say the wolf has convinced the sheep that the sheepdog is the bad guy. Now, how did that
Yes,
happen?
that
I'll
is.
tell you how it happened. And it
Okay.
helps you understand how it happened. And my book, Assassination Generation, I gave a copy to President Trump. I was invited to the White House after the Parkland school massacre. I gave a copy to the Vice President last August. I was invited to the White House to brief him about the violent video games and the violent media. The thing to understand is, when children are young, what they see on TV, what they see in the movies, and what happens in real life, and what happens in their dreams are all mixed together. Even adults. My son asked my wife, did I tell you that, or did I just dream that? And she said, you must have dreamed it, because I don't remember it. Have you ever been there? We have ever got dreams and reality? Children, when they watch somebody on TV do something, it's real to them. It's real. When I was a kid, my heroes were Adam 12 and Sergeant Friday, Just the Facts Man, and Marshall Dillon on Gunsmoke. I had the lunchbox, baby.
Yeah.
But today, we have a generation that grew up with Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy.
Wonder
We have
Woman
a generation
and
that grew up
Bionic
on-
Woman and $6 Million Man. Those were mine.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yes.
But now, like you were saying, we have
Yes.
Breaking Bad.
But
Go ahead.
today it's Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy. Yes. And Sons of Anarchy and whatever 6 shows on now. And name me one cop movie in 30 years didn't have a bad cop in there somewhere. We all cheer when the bad cop died. Training Day, Denzel Washington. Denzel's a bad cop. I've seen it. They're all bad. So these people sincerely believe what they saw in the movies is real. They sincerely believe what they saw on TV as children is real. They say that the criminal quickly forgets the victim, but the victim never forgets the criminal. They never
Absolutely.
forget the person who victimized them. And in the media, we victimize those children, and they remember that. It will take a generation to turn this thing around. When the movies first started in the 30s and 40s, right on to the 50s and early 60s, they had a code. And they said, we know that our movies influence our civilization. And we will present law enforcement as good guys and religious figures as good guys. And we will represent crime as being punished. And we will not represent criminals as good guys. And they knew that. And here's the big lie now. Here's television's, movies' big lie. The 30-second commercials worth vast amounts of money because it will change your behavior. Years and years of the sick stuff in between the commercials has no impact. Now think about that. It's a big lie. That commercial's worth vast amounts of money will influence their behavior. But all the tragic stuff we feed our children across the years has no impact. They will accept no responsibility. We got to understand how desperately bad this situation is. And at one level, the only answer is to enforce the rule of law, and for right-minded people who value justice, who value the rule of law, to circle the wagons and to keep your powder dry and work our way through these times. But the long-term answer, the long-term answer is understand what we're doing. And we have the brain scan studies. We'll show you the brain scan. Here's your kid's brain. Here's your kid's brain on video games. When violent visual imagery is inflicted upon children, they go into fight or flight. Their fight or flight hormones are flooding through their body. And predictive logical left brain processing shuts down. We'll show you the brain scan data. It's in the book. And understand how desperately bad it is. And we could hole up in a cabin somewhere in the woods. But if we love our nation, if we love our children, if we love our way of life, we'll go out there and fight for justice and fight for decency. And that brings us back to that sheepdog model, the guardian, the warrior, but the sheepdog. The sheepdog's wired that way. They can't do it any differently. It's who we are, it's what we do. We choose to do it, we reinforce the ability to do it, and it's a way of life, and they need our help and they need our support in these desperate times when the media is flat lying. The media is just flat misrepresenting our cops. Sick movies and sick shows that convince our children that cops are evil. And the very survival of our civilization is hanging in the balance. And how desperately we need our sheepdogs. And a lady sent me an email a while back. She said, I have 4 sons in the military. 2 are in the combat zone right now. I'm not a sheepdog. What am I? I said, if you give birth to sheepdogs, you're a sheepdog.
There you go.
Not all
I like
sheepdogs
that.
on the front lines carrying a rifle. Some are raising that next generation of sheepdogs. And that kind of brings me to my most recent book. I know you've already talked about Bulletproof Marriage on your show.
Yeah.
I co-authored a book with the same co-author, Adam Davis, on spiritual combat. One of the things that we want to talk about is that faith can sustain us. How do you suppose the military justifies chaplains in this day and age? That we know that faith can sustain us in hard times. We talk about an internal locus of control. Look at all the things you can't control and let go of them. They'll drive you mad. The past, everything in the past is done. You got to let go of it. At the national level, at the global level, what other people are doing, you can't control that. There's only one thing in the universe you can control, it's yourself right now. But it really helps to have a higher power to turn those things over to. If you don't have a higher power to turn those things over to, it can be hard. And on spiritual combat, we talk about the fact that cops look in the face of evil every day. Most of the people cops deal with are confused, misoriented, or in need of correction or guidance. But very often, when they look at a child being murdered, when they look at child abuse, they look at sexual abuse, they look at terrible crimes, and they said, this is evil. This is flat evil. And if you know there's evil in the world, and you don't have a force for good on your side, it's going to be a lot harder. You're fighting an uphill battle. And it's amazing how many cops believe in the force of evil in this world, but they don't believe in a force for good. And that's where this book comes in, to tap into that dynamic of faith to sustain us across the years. Does that all make sense, Cyndi? Does that
Absolutely. And you're talking about there, and I love that you're throwing out these psychology terms of, the locus of control. We have an external locus of control. Does the world control us? Or an internal locus of control? Can we make changes in the world? Is it up to us of how we're going to interact with the world as opposed to having a victim mindset of I'm a victim to the world? And that's the internal locus of control is I'm not going to be a victim to the world. I am going to control how I'm going to interact with the world. And I think that makes a lot of sense as far as, first of all, the sheepdog. I talk about sheepdog mentality a lot in my workshops that I do sometimes, my presentations that I give. And I have I have the old Wile E. Coyote Looney Tunes cartoon where I don't know if you remember the coyote and the sheepdog would check into work. Yeah. So that's what I have is that cartoon of the sheepdog looking over the sheep. And I've talked to spouses and even my friends. Sometimes my friends will leave the office and my coworkers, but leave the office and they're scrolling on their phones. And you have got to get your head out of your phone because somebody could come up and attack you. You've got to pay attention. I'm sure it's fine. It's daytime. No, we work with officers and they tell us that store across the street gets robbed all the time. Hello. It's that mentality of looking around and interacting with your world, but especially for our officers, it doesn't turn off. I don't think it turns off. It's not something really, before I go there, the spirituality I get too, because in that sense that you can believe in evil, but then you have to believe in the other side. I think the struggle a lot of times for officers that I've heard is there's a blame there's a blame that God or whoever is allowing these things to happen. But if you're having spiritual warfare, if you think of it that way, it's good and bad. I understand that. And I have not read Spiritual Combat, and I'll look at that. And I'm also really curious about the other book. What was the other book that you said? The newer one?
Oh,
The one you gave to
Assassination
Trump?
Generation.
Assassination Generation.
Yeah.
That is totally up my geek dork alley of looking at brain maps. I am so looking at that one.
It's all in there. Yeah. And one of the crazy things that's in there, they want to go away, was the state of California passed a law regulating children's access to violent video games. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor. The home of Hollywood, the home of Silicon Valley, passed a law overwhelmingly to regulate children's access to violent video games. Arnold Schwarzenegger said, I make violent movies, I protect my children from those movies, and I especially want to protect them from these violent video games. Well, the video game industry, you got to realize how much money this industry has. One video game, Grand Theft Auto 5, one of the record-selling one video game, the year it came out, made more money than the entire global music industry. One game made more money than every rock concert on the planet, every musician, every CD, every download on the planet. And so the video game industry fought all the way to the Supreme Court. They said, we have a constitutional First Amendment right to sell any game to any child at any age. You cannot regulate us, you cannot stop us any way, shape, or form. And they fought dirty, they lied, it's all in the book. And they conned 7 old men, 7 Supreme Court justices, they conned 7 old men into overturning the California state law. Nobody knows that. Nobody even knows it. They want that to go away.
I had no idea.
But we need to know what they did. We need to know who they are. And the fact that they fought all the way to the Supreme Court with lies and deception and vast amounts of money to sell any game to any kid at any age. Nobody should be telling adults what to do. Nobody should be talking free speech, and nobody should be talking book banning. But violent visual imagery inflicted upon children is a different product, and we have to protect our children. We have to understand that when they see that, it's real. We've got to make sure that when they do see violence, that it's righteous violence used by law enforcement, and that criminals are punished. These are the things that we had a code once upon a time. Today we turned that code on its head. But one other area, as we talk about law enforcement and being the sheepdog, I tell the story about my mom and dad. And I tell cops, I tell you, hold your loved one's hand. They keep your gun hand free. In academies nationwide, they put a band on the non-firing hand of the police academy. You pick something up with your gun hand, you just start doing push-ups. Very quickly learn to keep your gun hand free.
Yep.
And my dad was a cop. He started the beat in Cheyenne, Wyoming, 1962, no academy. Wyatt Earp didn't go to no stinking academy. It wasn't until the 1970s we began to send the most American cops to an academy. No FDO program, no academy. Imagine we still did that. Dad always had his back to the wall, always had a gun. And Mom and Dad had that kind of romance. They just hung together across all those years. Mom died about 25 years ago in her sleep, snuggled up with Dad, never woke up. And no, she wanted to go that way. Dad died about a year later, sitting in his chair, holding his beer, and never spilled his beer. He didn't want to go that way. And I miss him bad. I give a lot. But my dad bought 20 extra years one day in a store. Mom and Dad in the store together, holding hands, come around the corner, and there is an unhappy customer. Every cop is an unhappy customer out there somewhere. And this guy draws a gun and declares his intention to kill 2 most precious people on the planet. They're holding hands. Mom locks down, but his gun hand's free. Always had a lightning draw. Sidesteps in front of Mom, draws his gun, and completely transformed the situation. This guy was a jackal. He was a coyote. He thought he'd found a sheep, and Dad drew a gun and everything changed. And he didn't want anything to do with it, completely de-escalated the situation. Nobody had to die that day. But Dad bought 20 extra years because he prepared for a lifetime for that one day. Not just 20 extra years for him, but for my dad and the grandpa and the grandma of their grandchildren.
That's what I was going to say, all the memories that came from that too.
I tell people, can we walk the walk for a lifetime that'll buy us those 20 extra years with our grandchildren? And the cover of National Geographic magazine a while back was a photograph of a baby. It said, this baby will live to be 120 years old. No baloney. They believe a baby born today will have an average life expectancy of 120 years. If somebody murders one of my grandchildren, they have stolen 100 years from that child.
Wow.
I can walk the walk for a lifetime for that one day that'll buy back those 100 years.
That's such a great story. And as a spouse, I will tell you that I struggled because my husband is a total sheepdog. And sometimes it used to drive me nuts. And sometimes wait, you're wearing shorts and you're carrying what? There's the whole process I carry as well. But that took a mindset shift for me. It took me opening my eyes to seeing, hey, this isn't about I'm brandishing a gun or something like that. This is about me thinking through. I need to be prepared for something that may happen.
Yes.
And I'm okay with it. There has been times you talk about the holding hands, which is a joke in my relationship a little bit, because there are times where my husband, we like to travel to Italy sometimes, and we will be in a situation where we are unfamiliar with where we are, and he will drop my hand. And at first I'd say, what is that? That's crap. You need to hold my hand. What, do you not love me? I did all the, I'm going to call it, sorry, ladies, the typical girl stuff.
Yes.
And then he says, honey, I need my hands free to make sure you are safe. And when I feel something threatening, I'm going to drop your hand because I want you alive rather than dead. And it's the same thing that I do for my clients. I'm working with a client right now, but I told her, I said, I'll have you pissed off at me rather than dead. So you can be pissed at me all you want. You're alive.
Yes, and that's the sheepdog mindset. And the whole sheep thing is a continuum. There are no ultimate sheepdogs. There are no ultimate sheep. There's people up and down that continuum.
Yeah.
If you choose to carry pepper spray, you've taken a step up that continuum. You choose to carry yourself. Good for you. You've taken a major step up that continuum. But just understand, it's not yes or no. It's a matter of degrees. But one last area that what I would like very much to talk about is a thing that your listeners can take home and apply tonight. Is the area of sleep management.
Can I ask you one question before we go there? Okay. So my audience really wants to know your thought on this.
Yes.
And so here's what the question was. How do we as law enforcement or law enforcement spouses demonstrate that 99% of the officers are doing their job and they're willing or able to do, that they're honorable people and they want to help humanity? And they wanted to know what advice or wisdom that you had for that, because it's something that it's that feeling like we don't want to be silent. And right. So it's this conflict right now. So they wanted to know what wisdom you had for us on that.
This brings us back to that internal locus of control. There's only one thing in the universe you can control. You got to let go of what's happening out there. It'll drive you mad. Now there's things we can do. A Back the Blue type program. We got people doing that nationwide. We have Back the Blue rallies. We have support groups. We have volunteers in the police department. There's so many things we can do ourselves. But what you got to do is let go of what everybody else is doing. The first step is that internal locus of control. Just turn it over to higher power. Don't let those things get to you. All you can do is be the best model you can possibly be as a police officer. Now, as a cop, you would die for that person. Is it really that hard to be polite to that person, to be kind and courteous, in spite of all the things that are happening? You would lay your life down for those people. You got to recognize that in the same way, you set aside all your emotions and deal with them with compassion and courtesy. When a cop blows his cool and all this stuff is happening, and that just reinforces that mindset. And we got to recognize that the one thing in the universe we can control is ourselves. If we give way to bitterness or cynicism or complacency or denial, that's the one thing we can control. And we give them the world of victory with your own hand. Every time you're courteous to somebody, you won a victory. Every time you do your job with compassion and empathy and competence, you won a battle. That's all you can control. And the same thing with spouses and others. Back the Blue programs, baking cookies for the department. Just all the many things that we could be doing. I worked with a lady who put together a program where we had 200 law enforcement couples, 400 people in Kansas City. I presented all day long, and it was spiritually focused. I did my Bulletproof Mind dynamic, but it was all spiritually focused. And at the end, a pastor got up and had everybody look their spouse in the eyes and renew their vows. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was deep, it was powerful, and it was all because one cop's wife said, I want to make a difference. And I said, wow, let's do this every city in America. And she said, there's no way in the world I could do that. You don't understand how much work went into this one. You don't understand. I'm lucky I still have a marriage after all the time I spent on this one. But what a powerful example of what one person could do. It's just so beautiful. And never underestimate the power of one dedicated, determined person. Never doubt that a small group, determined citizens, can change the course of a civilization. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead, anthropologist. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, determined citizens can change the course of a civilization. Indeed,
important.
Margaret Mead. But recognize the fact that a small group of determined people can change our civilization. We are in the face of a full-on battle against law enforcement. But here's one thing you can do, right? Live in the moment. Live intensely in the moment. And on the phone, in front of all your friends, tell your spouse, I love you. Now, they'll be suspicious the first couple of times. But if you knew it was the last words you're ever going to say, well, that's what you'd want to say. Many cops' dying words tell my wife I love her. We just had a cop in Toledo murdered, and his dying words tell my family I love them. But tell them now. This might be the last chance you ever get. We're not talking about fear-driven. We're just talking about living intensely in the moment. The only thing we can control in the universe is ourselves right now. And there are so many things we can be doing, but recognize this battle against these sick TV shows and these sick movies. And here's one thing you can do. Don't let your kids watch those shows. Don't let your children, don't let your grandchildren watch those terrible, sick, modern movies and TV shows. Raise them on reruns of Bonanza. Raise them on 1 Adam 12 and Sergeant Friday. And control the message that you give those children. Don't let them strictly enforce the rating systems on the movies and the video games. And that's just a baseline. Enforce the rating system on movies and video games. It's just a baseline of what we give our children. And they will bless you as adults for the things that you didn't let them watch. They will bless you as adults for the time you turned the TV off and kicked them out in the backyard. They will bless you for those things as adults. And we need to do those things. That's one thing we can do right now, is protect our children from this evil, sick dynamic.
Yeah, I definitely think as I'm listening to you, Brene Brown talks about braving the wilderness, and that sometimes we feel like we're all alone. And it's like I think we as individuals, as law enforcement spouses or officers, or even individuals that just support law enforcement, we have to be willing to say, hey, I support law enforcement. And whether it's like you're saying, backing the blue or somehow supporting making cookies, whatever that is, it's being willing to stand up and staying out of defensiveness.
Yes.
And just doing your thing.
Yes.
Just keep doing your thing and showing up. And
yes.
Throughout the ages and throughout history, there have been plenty of people that have been, or populations really, that have been beat up, or ideologies that have been beat up. And it's just continuing to do what you know is right. And I love that. I talk to my clients a lot. Yes. Control two things: your own behaviors and your own beliefs. And that's it. Can't control anything else. So you got to keep doing that thing. Keep remembering what he's saying about the locus of control. It needs to be an internal locus of control. Think about what matters to you. Keep operating in that mindset. Awesome. You were going to talk about sleep. Let's do it.
Everybody can do. Oh yeah, here's one last thing everybody can do. Tell people about this podcast. Get people to listen to your podcast. There's something you can do.
Spread the word, guys.
Spouses group and get online and recommend this to each other. Yeah, pass the word. But I'll tell you one thing that we can start taking action on immediately. We're in the middle of a worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation. We have intrusive media. We have addictive video games. Adults are playing the games until they die. Adults are messing themselves and wet themselves playing the games because they can't leave it. Yeah, and we have the cell phones and the text messaging and all this intrusive stuff, and it's getting in the way of sleep. One of the streaming network guru owners said the other day, he said, my competition for binge watching these shows and watching these movies, said my competition is not other providers. My competition is sleep. He just said his goal is to steal your sleep. His goal is to stop you from sleeping by providing these binge watching shows, these addictive movies, and then the video games. Research tells us that video games are responsible for 15% of all divorces in America.
That doesn't surprise me.
Do a search on video games divorce, come right up. Percent. And the spouse says, what's more important, that game or your family?
It's
That's
the
easy.
dopamine.
Divorce. Ask yourself. And what you got to understand is right now, 200 million people are online playing games. And they're being tracked by computer-driven algorithms. We do this, and 0.5% say, oh, good time to quit the game and stop. So we'll never do that again. We do this, and absolutely nobody quits. We do more of that. It is a computer-driven algorithm to do one thing, to make that game impossible to turn off. I tell all you old-timers out there, everybody remembers Tetris. Think of Tetris on steroids with crack.
Yeah.
And each generation becomes more addictive. There is nothing wrong with adults playing any game unless
And I
it
want to
gets in the way
say,
of sleep.
and I want to say that it's also, when we're talking games, we're not just talking video games, Xbox stuff. We're talking Candy Crush, people. Candy Crush, Looney Tunes, whatever. There's all kinds of crazy games on your phone. We are talking those games as well, because there's this dopamine hit that goes on that keeps you engaged. And that's what all the sounds and the lights are. That's your brain getting hits. And that's why, that's why it invades your sleep, for sure.
And ask yourself, I tell you, block out an hour every night. Shut the door, turn off the world, play the game, escape, set a timer. Ding, the timer goes off. Use your syllogism, get on with life. And Bill said, well, I play a major, massive, metamorphic, online orgasmic game. You can't do a thing an hour to a night. Okay. Decide now what's important. Is your family important? Is your vow of marriage important? Is your oath as a peace officer important? Is your job important? Or is that game important? Decide now. Now that game's what's really important. It's cool. Quit your job right now. Move in your parents' basement. Draw unemployment. Buy a giant economy-sized bag of Cheetos. Play video games all night long. Millions of people are doing that. Do you want to uphold your vow of marriage, your oath as a peace officer? You want to uphold your responsibility to your family, to your fellow officers, to your community? You've got to get those games under control. And I say that to audience of military and law enforcement. The people look at me like a deer in the headlight. The man, you're talking to me. I said, that's okay. This is a social blind spot. Nobody ever told you that. Nobody ever told you. They're not going to tell you that you need to limit your time. They're not going to tell you that. It's a social blind spot. Nobody told you, but now you know, and you cannot deny it. Darn well I'm right. And you got to start taking action to control your life and control these games. Yes, Candy Crush on the phone. Are you playing Candy Crush and ignoring your child? Where is your priority? But here's the part of it. All these things get in the way of sleep. Text messaging, binge watching shows, social media, addictive video games. And we're in the middle of a worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation. Just do an online search for that. Epidemic of sleep deprivation worldwide. And here's what we know. In the military, we study every suicide intensely. And we know that a sleep-deprived soldier can be up to 5 times more likely to take their life. Sleep deprivation is one of the greatest predictors of suicide. Now,
I had no idea.
Yeah. Now, understand this. After 18 hours without sleep, your impaired judgment equal to 0.08 legally drunk. After 24 hours without sleep, your impaired judgment equal to 0.10 above legally drunk. 2 nights without sleep and you are psychotic. Any graduate of Army Ranger School will tell about hallucinations on the 3rd day without sleep. And so taking your life is not a natural act. You have to have profoundly impaired judgment to take your life. And alcohol and suicide has always been related. Alcohol creates impaired judgment, you make a bad decision, never get a chance to rethink it. But the most pervasive form of impaired judgment is sleep deprivation. And here's parenting 101 for the 21st century. When you send your kid to bed at night, take their cell phone away from them. Yeah. No laptop in the room, no cell phone in the room. They have got to go to the room and sleep. A cop came up to me during a break in a class, and he said, I had a good girl. He said, she was an A student. She said, Dad, it's embarrassing. You don't have to take my phone every night. You can trust me. So I trust her to keep her phone. He said, a little while later, she took her life. He said, my little girl took her life. And he said, I never knew the hell she was living in until we looked at the text messages on her cell phone. Night after night of ceaseless, relentless, vicious bullying. And that's another outcome of this whole dynamic is the bullying, the viciousness, the meanness, things that people would never say to your face. They will say online without hesitation.
Absolutely.
And the video games teach you to take pleasure from inflicting suffering on others. He said, I knew my little girl was bullied to death. What I didn't understand, she was sleep deprived, tormented, and sleep deprived and tortured to death in front of my eyes, and I let it happen. He said, I can't ignore that text message in the middle of the night. How can they expect their kids to? Teen suicide rates worldwide have exploded. Teenagers, 10, 11, 12-year-old.
Yes.
Teenage girls' suicide rate has tripled per capita in just the last decade. What is the new factor? The three major killers of our kids, and the three major killers that have exploded worldwide: suicides, traffic deaths. Now, I had 3 teenage boys. Now I got teenage grandchildren. And the number one killer of kids at that time was traffic deaths. And I made sure they all buckled in and they all had cars with airbags. That was something I could control. And 2 out of 3 tested the 2 out of 3 tested the airbag. But what nobody told me was the single most important thing I could give those kids was a good night's sleep before they're behind the wheel. There's a reason why truck drivers and airline pilots are required to get enough sleep by law. And if your kid is behind the wheel of a vehicle, they have got to get a good night's sleep the night before.
And when we're talking about law enforcement, though, too, like we're talking about this hypervigilance, we're talking about that cycle that they go through, and it takes 18 to 24 hours for them to recover from it. But yes, they're back on duty way before that. And so,
killers of our cops are suicides and traffic deaths.
Yeah.
If we gave one hoot in the hell about our cops, if we gave one damn about our cops, we would mandate sleep for law enforcement. If I were king and could pass one law, I'd mandate sleep for law enforcement. And like truck drivers and airline pilots and air traffic controllers, nuclear power plant operators, tugboat operators, fairboat operators, Amtrak engineers, and dozens of other people require below getting sleep, but cops aren't. That should enrage us. I tell people that cops should be treated like airline pilots, making split-second life and death decisions. And they should be not just the pilot, but the flight attendant and the mechanic who works on the plane is required to get enough sleep. And we need to apply that same mindset to law enforcement. But the third major killer worldwide is drug overdoses, especially opiates. Prescription opiates have always been there. What's the new factor? Sleep deprivation creates chronic pain. Doc, I heard all the time, give me a pill to pick. I need a pill, need more sleep. I need to knock off the caffeine shortly after lunch that's stopping you from getting to deep cycle sleep. 3 major killers have exploded worldwide: suicide, traffic deaths, and opiate overdoses, opiate epidemic. What is the new factor? This worldwide epidemic of sleep deprivation. But you're never going to, the cell phone industry is never going to tell you, don't buy a cell phone for your kid. The TV will never tell you, don't binge watch this TV show. They are in
the streaming services are never going to say, it's time for you to go to bed. I think about that. And when I'm dating myself, guys, I know this, but when I was going to bed, when I was a kid, the TVs went off, the national anthem played, right? And it was time to go to bed. Like it was midnight, go to bed. Yeah.
And so they're not connecting the dots out there because they don't want to go where the narrative goes. Just like the murder rates being held down by medical technology. Why don't we know about that? Because they don't like where that narrative goes. There is no boogeyman. Our problem is out-of-control cops. You don't need a gun, you would just hurt yourself. And the dynamics of sleep deprivation, the worldwide epidemic of drug overdoses and opiate epidemic, the suicides have exploded and traffic deaths have exploded, and the sleep deprivation, they don't want to go there. We've got to do the right thing. And again, all of that's in my book, Assassination Generation, the sleep deprivation and the suicides. But just understand that there are things we can do starting tonight. And real quick, let me mention, sleep is a biological blind spot. Our bodies don't know how to make us get enough sleep because it always happened naturally. Throughout human history, every night, without fail, it got dark. There was nothing to do. You had so much sex and a little talk, and then you went to sleep. There was nothing to do. Now, our bodies are good at getting air, food, and water. You ever wonder how good is a body getting the right amount of food? How much extra food would a kid have to eat to put on 1 extra pound a month? If a kid puts on 1 extra pound a month, by the time he's 10, he's 120 pounds overweight. As we get older, it gets harder. But our bodies are pretty amazing at air, food, water. Our bodies are incompetent at making us get enough sleep. It's a biological blind spot. There's nothing tough, there's nothing macho, there's nothing impressive about going without sleep. Any 10-year-old girl slumber party can do it. The professional thing is to manage your sleep. And I'm a huge fan of the fitness trackers. I personally like the Fitbit Charge 3. It's waterproof, wear it in the pool, wear it in the shower. It will track your heart rate throughout the day, and that's vital information. Where's my heart rate at different points in the day? Yeah. It will track your steps, your calories, and it will track your sleep and your cycles of sleep, and it will rock your world. We got to manage our sleep. But here's two dynamics on shift work. Now, most of you out there can't control this, but some of you can, and it's important. First, we know that the 12-hour shifts are a disaster. Major departments go to 12-hour shifts. California Highway Patrol went to 12-hour shifts. Accidents exploded, internal affairs investigations, complaints exploded. You're not getting 12 hours of work out of them. At the end of the shift, they're exhausted. Add a little commute time, add a little family time, and you're bumping against that 18-hour window of impaired judgment equal to being drunk. And so what we've got to understand is 10s are doable, but we got to put a hard cap on it. California Highway Patrol went to 12-hour shifts. In about a year, they dropped it like a hot rock. Any major department goes there. They want to be like firefighters. Work 12-hour shifts, get all that time off. Firefighters get to sleep on the job. Only firefighters and prostitutes make money in bed, right? I know you like that. So you can't control that, but here is the single most harmful, destructive thing that we're doing, is rotating shifts. Do some research on shift work and rotating shifts. You're destroying families. Families handle day shifts, families handle night shifts. Families have a very hard time handling rotating shifts. You're taking years off people's lives. And there's great data that tells us that sleep deprivation and rotating shifts are a key factor in Alzheimer's and dementia as the years add up on us. And rotating shifts gives everybody jet lag. It puts everybody behind the eight. There's nothing you can do to destroy the performance of everybody like rotating shifts. The old timers know what they're doing. 8-hour shifts, 10s are doable, put a hard cap on it, and bid for your shift based on seniority. You want to stay on nights for a lifetime? Good for you. Stay on nights. Your body's adapted. Your family's adapted. Stay on nights. Hunt the wolf. You want to move to days? You've got the seniority. You've earned it. You can move to days. So what happens to the new guys come on board and say, I don't want to wait to get seniority to be on day shift. This is no fair. Let's rotate shifts. Well, suck it up, buttercup. Because rotating shifts means everybody loses. We can't keep doing this. I tell departments, if you're rotating shifts, start saving money now. You're going to be sued, and you're going to be successfully sued. You're destroying their performance. You're destroying their families, and you're taking years off their lives. These are stupid stuff that we're doing that we can start right now. Spouse groups, or somebody listening out there is the spouse of the chief. Somebody out there is the spouse of the sheriff who can start taking action and applying those. But here are a set of sleep hacks you can apply tonight. Number one, naps are a friend, but the minimum nap is 30 minutes. 30 minutes is not a good nap, it's a minimum nap. So that means a 10-minute nap is a waste of time. And you're driving down the road, you hit his bob and take the little micro naps. So I've been there, little micro naps, yeah? You pull over, get a 10-minute nap, the alarm goes off, startle response. But as far as sleep deprivation goes, that 10-minute nap was a waste of time.
Okay.
Set the alarm for 30 minutes, the alarm goes off, you're bleary and you're groggy, you don't get up because you're asleep. It takes 30 minutes to fall into deep cycle, then we'll get back up in sleep. So that means the snooze alarm is not our friend. The snooze alarm is always set for about 10 minutes. As that time, get that startle response. The snooze alarm is an evil little button that makes you relive the worst part of every day over and over again.
We don't need that.
And I am deadly serious. Never touch that snooze alarm again. So the research tells us that we're trying to force our body to fall into a deep cycle of sleep in 10 minutes, and it can't do it. We're literally torturing our body and causing harm to our body and mind with the snooze alarm. And it comes back to who's in charge. Are you in charge of your body, or is your body in charge of you? Give a kid a marshmallow. You can eat this marshmallow right now.
I did the marshmallow experiment.
I'll be back in 3 minutes, another marshmallow. Don't eat it. You can have them both. That is one of the greatest predictors of success in life. You can't change your kid's IQ. You can't change your IQ. You can change their self-discipline. And Muhammad Ali was a boxer, great champion. He said championship began every morning when the alarm went off. He said, I hated running so much, I put my running shoes on top of the alarm. When I hit the alarm, I grabbed my running shoes. That's champion willpower. Have you got what it takes to suck up a bullet and drive on? Are you in charge of your body? It's the first act of every morning to surrender to your body. A 10-minute snooze, a 10-minute snooze, a third snooze, you just threw away 30 minutes of your life. You in the room with you. Those 3 snoozes, nobody as far as sleep goes, nobody as far as your life goes. I will teach you a trick that'll put 30 minutes of quality sleep back in every day. That adds up to 3.5 hours sleep back in every week, 2 full, pure, beautiful nights sleep back in every month, 24 nights sleep back in every year. Very simple. Set the alarm a half hour later and get the hell out of bed. And set your cell phone for 10 alarms. And by the time you turn off all those alarms, you're awake. And the person goes to bed at night is you might be the one that gets up in the morning, get out of bed. And you do that starting tonight. Sleep in a totally dark room. Dark is our friend. Make the room as dark as you can, and then add to that a sleep mask.
Get the blackout curtains, get a mask.
The research tells us a major study in the sleep lab. Totally dark room, bathroom light is on, and the door is shut. The light coming out of the crack of the bathroom door is enough light to stop your body from producing the melatonin that you need. And you can rock your world starting now by making the room as dark as possible and add a sleep mask. The combination is dynamite. In the military, we're passing out those sleep masks to our troops by the fistful. And it looked like Lone Ranger without the eye holes. But from the very beginning, we're teaching them to have healthy sleep. And teach your children to sleep in the dark. Babies are sloshing with melatonin. Babies can sleep anywhere. As we get older and older, the body produces less and less melatonin. By the time we become teenagers, it becomes very important that they're sleeping in a totally dark room or with a sleep mask on. You can impact your children now to get quality sleep. Remember, the major killers of our kids, traffic deaths, drug overdoses, and suicide. And the factor that we can influence is the quality of our kids' sleep and the quantity of their sleep. Alcohol is not our friend. There's nothing wrong with a nightcap. The data tells us 1 drink, 1 beer on the way to bed, no big deal. But pound down 3 beers and go to bed. Wear your fitness tracker and see what it does to your sleep. You will fall quickly into a shallow sleep. You'll wake up an hour or so later and can't get back to sleep. No more than 1 drink on the way to bed. Don't wake up at the night and have a cigarette. This is a one time to show some discipline. But caffeine. Caffeine is our friend, but we're in the middle of a worldwide epidemic of caffeine abuse. And it's killing us. It's destroying our quality of sleep. It's destroying our bodies. And here's what we know. The half-life of caffeine in our body is 5 hours. That means that caffeine you took at 5 p.m. is still at half strength when you go to bed at 10 p.m. And people say, oh, caffeine doesn't bother my sleep. But then why are you taking it? But caffeine doesn't make us not sleep. Caffeine makes it easier to stay awake and harder to have quality sleep. Guard your sleep. Protect your sleep. Sleep is that little vacation that comes at the end of every day. And caffeine is the enemy of good sleep. Cut off all caffeine shortly after lunch, and you will begin to rock your world. And what I tell people is, are you addicted to caffeine? Take the test. Cut off all caffeine for 1 day. If you get withdrawal symptoms, that's what's happening. Those are withdrawal symptoms. Headaches, shakes, digestive problems. If you get any withdrawal symptoms, that's living proof you're abusing a powerful and useful drug. Taper off now. And the source of caffeine appears to be important. The research keeps telling us that coffee and tea can be pretty good for us. Coffee drinkers and tea drinkers appear to be living several years longer than non-coffee drinkers. People say, oh, I must be immortal. Here's what we know. About 4 normal-sized cups of coffee a day can be pretty good for us. A cup or 2 of tea at breakfast, a cup or 2 at lunch, then switch to decaf, have all you want. And then when you need it, it'll be there for you. You're changing shifts, you have emergency operations, you're going 24/7, you're split shift, you're driving your family home from vacation. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, your head is bobbing.
Yeah.
Will a cup of coffee keep you awake? Or you've been abusing caffeine and it won't have any impact. And not only you, but your family dies when you run off the road. It's controlling this drug. And
it's also the energy drinks, too. All the energy drinks.
Yes. I'm going to get to the energy drinks.
Oh, okay.
The sodas are poison. The diet sodas appear to be worse. I think why coffee drinkers and tea drinkers are living so long is soda drinkers and diet soda drinkers are just so bad for us. And the data keeps stacking on. There's nothing wrong with 1 soda, 1 candy bar. Nothing wrong with 1 Diet Coke. But if your blood type is Diet Coke, if your only form of hydration is sodas, It's the only form of nutrition was candy bars. And the energy drinks are condensed poison. We've been at war going on 20 years now. For the first 15 years, the U.S. Armed Forces passed out energy drinks water. They gave us pallets full of energy drinks. They gave them us, we gave them the troops. Aren't we nice guys? And then 2 major Department of Defense-wide studies on the energy drinks. Today, there is a complete ban on issuing energy drinks in the U.S. Armed Forces. Cigarettes. You want to buy your own? Not going to stop you, but we'll never give them to you. In an academic environment, the one take the most energy drinks were the ones with the worst grades. In a tactical environment, the one take the most energy drinks were the ones most likely to not off on the job. All there is in that energy drink is a mega dose of caffeine and sugar and some stuff to help you metabolize it quickly. It will give you a 1-hour burst of physical ability, and then you crash. Before a PT test, before an athletic event, one energy drink's not a bad idea. The second one is doing no good whatsoever, except to build up your tolerance and addiction to caffeine. The third one is worse. The fourth one is destroying you. We got 30-year-old men going to the hospital with a heart of 89-year-old. Those energy drinks are destroying their hearts. They're condensed poison, and we got to get those things under control. Again, the research on the energy drinks, the military research, is just overwhelming. They should be deeply concerned about the guy who keeps pounding down caffeine, but if used appropriately, if you're not building up a tolerance to it, like I said, cup or 2 of coffee, tea at breakfast, cup or 2 at lunch, switch to decaf, have all you want, and then it's there for you when you need it. These are life hacks that we can start applying tonight. And don't touch that snooze alarm. Set 10 alarms for the same time. By the time you turn them off, you're up. Totally dark room. And go online, order a sleep mask now. Cut off caffeine shortly after lunch, and you will begin to rock your world starting tomorrow morning. And,
that is awesome.
And take care of your children's sleep and your sleep. It's so important. It's something we can do now.
One thing I've also heard too is that we have a 5-second window before our brain decides that our brain wants what's most comfortable, right? It wants the path of least resistance. And what I've heard is that we have a 5-second window to make that decision of doing something that bypasses the path of least resistance. So I've actually heard of a technique of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then doing the thing. Because if you do not make that decision within 5 seconds, your body is going to take you a different route. And whether it's exercise, whether it's caffeine, whether it's sleep, whether it's picking up the phone and scrolling, whether it's all these different aspects, that we have that 5-second window. So all of that.
That covers a whole new topic. It's very important. In a nutshell, when there's a life and death event, the sympathetic nervous system arousal, fight or flight.
Yeah.
There's a parasympathetic backlash. It's called rest and digest, sometimes called feed and breed. Fight or flight, feed and breed, the 4 F's. So when we talk about after a life and death event, victims of crime, cops, EMS, and fire, they talk about having some really intense sex. And it scares them. And I need to tell them that this is normal. Again, fight or flight and feed and breed, that biological backlash, it's normal, nothing wrong if it doesn't happen, but it scares people. In a nutshell, when we're up there in fight or flight, when you're dealing with a frightened person, how can we bring them back down again? And the breathing exercise is the tool. And I've always thought part of the breathing exercise was the act of counting. In through the nose, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips, 2, 3, 4. The act of counting is part of that process. But a shortcut, getting people breathe, is a big swig of water. Now, in a nutshell, PTSD, you go on that roller coaster ride, sympathetic and parasympathetic backlash. Re-experiencing that event is normal. A gunshot goes off, you don't expect it, a week later, and you're going on that roller coaster ride again. That's normal.
Yes.
But if you try to not think about it, you will literally drive yourself crazy. You're moving down the path of PTSD. The path of healing is to separate the memory from the emotions. So you talk about CISM, Critical Incident Stress Management, and the debriefings that we do. I've had the honor to train, most years I'm out in Baltimore at their annual conference as one of their trainers. And we talk about the debriefing, and everybody talks about what happened, but today we add a bottle of water. And as everybody talks about what happened, if anybody becomes emotional, they just stop, take a big swig of water, regain control, and keep talking. We're pulling ourselves from fight or flight, the rest and digest with that swig of water. Tell people a deer's being chased by a wolf. Can you stop and get a drink? He's really thirsty. I can't get a drink. I'm being chased by a wolf. The fact of taking a drink sends a message to your body.
I'm safe. You're right.
I have a time for a drink. And the act of swallowing. When we see food, we salivate, right? That's feed and breathe. When stressed, we have dry mouth. They're the opposite of each other, salivation and dry mouth. So taking that swig of water negates dry mouth, the act of swallowing, the message that I'm safe. But a friend of mine, in a nutshell, the path to healing from PTSD is to separate the memory from the emotions. And a friend of mine is one of our nation's leading therapists for federal agents. And she talked about using the water. They talk about what happened, they become emotional, take a swig of water. And she said 6 years of college, 20 years of practice, and that stupid bottle of water is doing more good than anything I've ever done. You know what she does now? Even better, she's pioneering this stuff. She's got a fridge back behind her desk. What's your favorite ice cream flavor? Oh, I didn't get no ice cream. I don't want no ice cream. Come on, everybody's favorite. What's your favorite flavor? Oh, I don't want ice cream. Come on, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? I like mint chocolate chip. Wow, have a cup of mint chocolate chip. Just have a bite. Start talking with me. And talking over food and the act of swallowing and food. So think about this now. Isn't that incredible? Now, I trained in Major Spec Ops unit, and the master sergeant that was my host, his wife is an emergency room psychiatrist. And she told him about something sweeping through the ER around the world. You have a crackhead or a meth head turn up your emergency room. They do. They grab a bag of, they rip it open, they shove it in his face. Would you like some? And in most cases, completely diffuse the situation. He said, now, I'm your typical cynical guy. I blew it off. Yeah, sure, I blew it off. This kind of guy carried a gun off duty, kind of guy. He said 2 different times, I'm in the civilian world with my wife, carrying a gun, concealed. And 2 different times, I thought I was going to have to draw my gun and fight for our lives. Both times, my wife reaches in her purse, grabs a bag of M&Ms, rips it open, shoves the guy's face. Would you like some? And completely diffuse the situation. He said, it's one thing when a pretty girl does it. I'm not so sure it worked for me. It's good to have plan B back here. But the power of food to pull people from fight or flight to rest is all cutting edge stuff. I'll give you one more example that'll blow your mind. A cop came up to me during a break in a class and he brought his partner to vouch for the story. Naked guy in the front yard, screaming, throwing things, parents on the porch, don't shoot our kid, don't shoot our kid. Now naked guys usually mean something's wrong.
Yes.
And very often, what you're looking at is excited delirium. Their body goes into overdrive. They're not capable of rational thought. They're hot. The reason why they're naked is they're hot. They take their clothes off. And if you have a naked guy die on you, you have the docs take a temperature. If that guy's running a temp, something happened and you didn't do it. Let's say it's excited delirium, we don't know. But the cop said, I happen to have a Snickers bar in my hand. Hey, buddy, you want a Snickers bar? Huh? Walked up to him, put it in his face. You want a Snickers bar? Yeah. Follow me to the room, I'll give it to you. The room, gave a Snickers bar, walked away. Was it excited delirium? Would it work again? We don't know. It's one of those, what do you got to lose things. But the swig of water, the M&M, the Snickers bar, what's your favorite brand of ice cream? These are all powerful tools that pull us from fight or flight, rest and digest. And they're so basic and so fundamental, and yet we're just now beginning to apply them. I know as a therapist, you love that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. But you don't always have a swig of water. You can always stop and take a breath.
I love this. So now we're going to have Life Hacks with Dave is what we're going to call this. It's going to be Life Hacks with Dave, and we're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk about swigging water and eating some ice cream and carrying M&Ms in your pocket.
Yes.
Gun on one hip, gun on one hip, and M's on the other.
M&Ms will travel. These are all what do you got to lose stuff.
Totally.
Things. Yeah. We're building amazing. But remember, I have hundreds of case studies, emails that people have sent me, letters, organized by topic. And of all the topics, the breathing exercise has saved the most lives, has made the most difference. Just a couple of weeks ago, I got one. A guy had a couple of tours, Iraq and Afghanistan, and he's a civilian now. He's shaking off some cobwebs. He's doing some wilderness training. He said, I'm up on a mountainside. We camped for the night on the top of this glacier, high up on this mountain. I get up in the middle of the night, and I'm completely disoriented. And I'm wandering around. I'm on this icy glacier without traction devices, and I'm completely disoriented. And I heard your voice saying, breathe. In through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips, 2, 3, 4. hold 2, 3, 4. He said, I took 2 deep breaths, regained control, and I realized I was literally a step away from stepping off a cliff and dying. All the time. A lady said she and her husband had listened to the audiobook of On Combat. I did the reading for all my audiobooks, been well received. And she and her husband had listened to the audiobook of On Combat. She's in the hospital. She's had a tube run down her throat. She's in a life and death medical emergency, and she's gagging. And she scrawls on a piece of paper to her husband, Grossman, breathing. He said, I knew exactly what you're saying, and I started coaching her. Breathe in through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Out through the lips, 2, 3, 4. And he said, he sent me an email, said, I believe with all my heart the breathing saved her life. And again, a cop sent me an email just 2 weeks ago, said, don't let anybody tell you that combat breathing doesn't work. You can hear me on the radio doing it as I'm calling in my emergency call. You don't always have the swig of water. You know, always stop and take a breath. In through the nose for 4 count, hold for 4 count, out through the lips for 4 count, hold for 4 count, again and again. And
Absolutely.
they're teaching this to little kids. Here's how they teach it to kids. The doc takes a scented plastic flower, and an FBI agent, 3-year-old, holding his breath. A cop in Florida, their 4-year-old daughter having hysteria responses. Both cases, the doc says they'll outgrow it, it can't do any harm, but I'll show you something. And right there on the spot, the doc's got this scented plastic flower. He lights a candle. Smell in the flower, enjoy it, blow out the candle, watch the smoke. Now you do it. That fast. We got a 3-year-old breathing on command. I did it with my grandkids. I went out and plucked a flower and lit a candle. A cop in Florida told me, he said, took my little girl to the doc. He said, no big deal, she'll outgrow it, but he taught her the breathing exercise that fast. And he said, it's amazing. She starts getting worked, or remind her to breathe, pulls her right out of it. Let's say one day I'm driving in traffic. I'm having a bad day. Just me and my little girl in the back seat and the kid seat. Somebody cuts me off in traffic. I lean out the window, shouting at this guy, waving my fist for the back seat of my daughter, say, breathe, Daddy, breathe. He said, it worked. It worked. He said, sometimes we all need that reminder. We all just need that little reminder. This is our profession. This is who we are. This is what we do. Is taking these life-saving tools and skills, these life hacks, and giving them to people. And it is a great honor in my life to be able to talk with a fellow warrior healer, a sheepdog healer, who's dedicated to helping others in the profession and others who are spouses for our sheepdogs. Just God bless you and all the dear people that you work with, and God bless America, because we need it.
We need a lot of that right now.
And it's going to get worse before it gets better, but keep hanging in there. Believe in who you are, believe in what you do.
Thank you so much for taking the time. This has been so informative, and it's helpful to think about the sheepdog and what has to happen. And I love that you said it's on a continuum, and that all of us can embrace our own sheepdog, that we need to think about that locus of control. That, the canines, right? Yeah. He's pointing to his canine teeth. And then to think about the locus of control. Make sure that we have an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control, that we can make life happen. We can do it for ourselves. And some of that involves those life hacks, right? The life hacks of breathing, of sleeping, of, I would say, mindset, as well as other things, but all of those life hacks that Dave mentioned. And then the other aspect that I want to make sure that we point out again is to keep your kids safe. Start to change the way that officers are seen, and take away all of those digital aspects that impact your sleep. Take away the fact that those video games, the violence that may be invading your own life that you don't need, or the lives of your kids. Spread the word on that, because that will definitely impact the way that crime is happening and the safety of our officers altogether. If you want any of his books, I will put links in my show notes, because they are all there. His books are amazing. He has a heart when he writes, and you're listening to him now and you're going to get it. It's this combination, great combination, I think, of facts, which I know my law enforcement guys like. Give me the facts, right? But then also the real life application. It makes sense. And that's why I think your books are so popular, is that it's the information, but it's so applicable. Thank you for all you do for our community. Thank you for giving and your life. Thank your wife for sacrificing time with you, for helping to impact all of us. I appreciate it so much.
God bless you. Thanks for all you do. Iron sharpens
Thank you.
iron. Is that
Until
a good
next
ending
time.
point there, Cyndi? Yeah.
Say that again.
Is that a good ending point now? Cut there.
Yes. Let me do my one last thing.
All
Until
right.
next time. Until next time, guys. Keep it code 4.
Thanks for joining us. For more information about the podcast or Cyndi, check out code4couples.com. All intellectual property rights owned by CRLD2 Ventures, LLC, are protected by the firm of 9mm, 45 ACP, 5.56mm, and 12 gauge.